So I played this game yesterday, and I played it before, and I really tried to give it a chance, didn't I? I gave it a fair shot. I gave it 3 fair shots.
And I wanted to love this game, I really did. But I felt like the game just wouldn't let me. And with the amount of sad or broken bosses and gotchas over gameplay, I have to say that this is a game that I sort of enjoyed, but was very disappointing.
It's a game with great ambitions and excellent artistic direction, but unfortunately falls short of expectations when it comes to performance, narrative, level design, and combat polish.
The entire game feels like Dark Souls 2 if you combined the Iron Keep and the Scholar of the First Sin edition, and you mix that in with Shrine of Amala, and then combined together you stretch out the experience for the duration of an entire game. That's what the levels feel like to me.
I'm done with Lords of the Fallen. I will not be continuing it. It is one of the most disappointing games I've ever played, and I did not come to this conclusion lightly.
You underestimate my power!
And now, we're proud to present version 2.0, the definitive edition of Lords of the Fallen.
I thought you were dead.
My death was greatly exaggerated. So, you're the punk I've heard about.
I don't think there's been a more requested video on this channel than Lords of the Fallen 2.0. Up to this point, I hadn't gotten around to it because there were other games that came up, like Tainted Grail, Night Rain, Lies of P Overture, but being a massive Souls junkie, I always knew at some point I would be playing this game. Most of you know the story of Lords of the Fallen at launch, widely panned, some calling it one of the worst games of 2023, but developer Hexworks and CI Games stuck with it. And these last 2 years, they've been working to make it better. It's not often you get a game at launch that everybody says is abysmal and then turns into something that is respected by the general community. There's been high-profile cases of this, No Man's Sky, Cyberpunk, Battlefront 2, but it's not common that a game makes a crazy rebound like this. Since launch though, Lords of the Fallen has released over 50 post-launch updates leading up to its 2.0 release. I myself didn't play the game at launch. I know, I was just starting YouTube, heard it was bad, and didn't bother buying it since I had to save money. And it didn't help that Lies of P released right next to it, but I feel like now it's time. It's time I put my money where my mouth is and finally play Lords of the Fallen 2.0 and see if it actually turned into something great. And after playing it, hot damn, boy! Before I say anything, you have to commend Hexworks and CI Games for sticking with this game and taking the time to address all the feedback they've gotten to the best of their ability. Most developers would just say, we tried, on to the next thing. And that commitment definitely deserves a round of applause. And I have no doubt that this game was atrocious at launch. But right now, this is an incredible game. Why did I wait this long? Even though there are some problems that seem like you can mostly blame on the original release, I gotta say, for a game that was this widely panned at release, if you said those things that I heard at launch about this game now, I'd like to have a nice encounter with you in an empty bathroom. But enough of my rambling. Is Lords of the Fallen worth jumping onto now? And more importantly, is it worthy of being called a redemption story? Well, let's hurry before the Lightreaper ambushes us again. So strap in, boys and girls, and let's get down to business. So as someone who's coming in for the first time, what I played is Lords of the Fallen to me. I don't know what it was like at launch, so I wouldn't be able to tell you what changes were made without looking at a list. So I'm judging everything here based on that. Although one thing I do want to mention, because I don't think I'm going to find a spot to fit this in, but one thing they added into this game is the Friends Pass, like how Hazelight's games have it, so your friend doesn't have to own the game in order to play it. I am always going to love pro-consumer moves like this and stuff that encourages co-op. Can't get any of my friends to play Souls likes because they rather play Kingdom Hearts, but it's there for those of you who don't have lame friends. So now you know about that. Let's really get into it. The first thing I want to touch on is the combat. It feels really good. It feels like Dark Souls 3 combat with a little more weight to it. Apparently that wasn't the case at launch. People called it floaty. Definitely doesn't feel like that now. I will say though, it's kind of disappointing that you can only have one weapon option for each hand rather than being able to switch the weapon in your right hand versus the left, but it's not that big of a deal. Let me tell you though, it feels great to dual wield. This is the first Souls-like that I've been willing to dual wield greatswords, mainly because of this.
And look at Randy Orton slithering.
Watch out, watch out, watch out, watch out!
I also don't use magic in Souls games because I'm not a pussy.
Just kidding.
But looking at some of these spells that I've seen from other people, the spellcasting looks pretty badass. Might try it on a second playthrough against my better nature. But wait, what is this? Is that the rally system? That's right, baby. It's here in living color. It mostly becomes a thing when you're in the Umbral realm, which I'll touch on in a little bit, especially when you have your Umbral lamp and you could suck these little tumors on the walls and regain chip damage. That way, when you hit an enemy, you recover health. But speaking of your Umbral lamp, have you ever wanted to suck the soul out of someone without getting down on your hands and knees? Well, now you can with the Soul Flay. Here, you can rip the soul out of enemies and bash away, dealing chip damage, so when it goes back and you hit them once, boom!
Now that's a lot of damage!
And if you die, oh well, you can just come back to... Wait, what? The Sekiro life system is in here too? That's two. That's two of my favorite systems. You're winning me over, CI. When you die in Lords of the Fallen, you revive in the Umbral Realm and are given one last chance. And you revive with a ton of chip damage you can recover from. And they even put these little pods around the map that I guarantee are there just to give you your health back. Yeah, they spawn enemies eventually, but let's be real, they're punching bags. But the combat in Lords of the Fallen overall feels great. But the thing I was most scared about, and what I heard the most horror stories on, was the actual level design. So let's just say, I braced myself. So in terms of aesthetic, holy shit, this world looks incredible. If there's one thing you could say about the overworld of Mournstead, it's one of the most immersive worlds I've ever seen in a Souls-like. I just made a video saying Lies of P was untouchable when it came to atmosphere. Turns out Lords of the Fallen was like, hey, hello? I've been here the whole time. There's dark fantasy, and then there's Lords of the Fallen. It feels like medieval dark fantasy mixed with, like, the Salem witch trials. Castles and settlements mixed with otherworldly monsters and gothic aesthetics. Like, damn, dude, whoever was in charge of the art direction needs a raise. This was one of the first prominent games that utilized Unreal Engine 5, and hot damn does it make the most out of every bit of it. And that's just the overworld. Then you transition to the Umbral realm, which in the words of Billy Butcher, is f***ing diabolical. The alternate blue and gray realm with this, I don't even know what to call this gray stuff that's covering the place, but I do know what to call these giant monsters and swords in the distance and that weird ass hand structure shit. I'm trying to find human words to describe this, but I can't do it. This is absolutely incredible. But the Umbral realm is not just a badass backdrop, because besides being the site of your second life, it's also used for a little puzzle solving. Sometimes there'll be no way to advance in the overworld, but when you shine the Umbral lamp, it reveals a hidden path. Sometimes there's a gate in your way. The Umbral realm says, what gate? Sometimes there's a Shuma Goroth looking thing blocking your way, so you have to find the endpoint and suck that thing away. And since the Umbral realm is where you can actually die, there's a bunch of exit points around the areas to go back to the real world, essentially adding another life to you and getting out of that hellhole, because even though it looks cool, the Umbral world also brings new, very obnoxious enemies. And sometimes you'll have to go through the Umbral realm to kill an enemy, because some will have what is called an Umbral parasite attached to them that regenerates their health or makes them, which forces you to switch over to the Umbral realm where you can kill the parasites. Now here's where I get into the area layouts, because even though I consider it good, man, is it confusing as hell.
Where am I to go, so where am I to go?
The way the maps are laid out, I got turned around like way more times than I'd like to admit. I mean, when I played Dark Souls and Bloodborne for the first time, I was lost, but not this lost. Every area feels like a maze, like unnecessarily so. These maps ain't helping much either. I don't know who thought that was a good idea. Now, I would be more harsh on this if they didn't have the lamp guidance, which shows you the direction you need to go in, which thank God this thing exists. Otherwise, I don't think I would have finished this game. But sometimes it doesn't work, like, at all.
Your Umbral lamp now has the ability to highlight the path towards your next vestige point.
How the fuck would you show me something if I couldn't have it then?
I don't know if this is a bug or it needs some type of consumable. From what I can gather online, nobody else knows either. If this is a bug, you guys know what to do next. But aside from that, there's still some remnants of the enemy density problems that the launch had. Especially towards the end, you got random enemies bunched together, sometimes stronger enemies, and while it's not bad layout, it definitely makes you wonder how bad it was in the base game. Oh look, one of the endgame modifiers restores the launch enemy density. Wait, what? Scared? Me? No, I'm not scared of putting that on. I'm not scared of putting that on whatsoever on my second playthrough. Why would you say that? I'm a big strong boy. I'm a big strong boy that beat Dark Souls 2. I'm not scared of this shit. And once you start mixing overworld enemies with umbral enemies, oh boy, you better be careful where you step, or else you can end up like the white girl in that couch meme. But another thing that I love about this game is the fact that in between your bonfires, or vestiges as they're called in this game, you have small areas where you could put down vestige seeds, creating your own rest points in between the main vestiges. And you're gonna need it because the distance between these things can really get long, even with the shortcuts you can open up. But what makes it great is that you can't just put them down willy-nilly. You only have a set amount that you can only get by beating mini bosses and some big enemies. So you have to be strategic with where you want to put them down. You don't want to put them down at every one you see, because when you get to a spot where you should put it down, you're not going to have any more. It makes you think whether or not you want to use a vestige seed or risk it and continue on in the hopes of finding a regular vestige or a better spot. Honestly, genius idea. Well done. But now, I must talk about hands down the biggest problem with Lords of the Fallen. Where in the goddamn hell is the enemy variety?
Look! We close! We're all closed!
Do you want to know who you're going to be fighting? Grunt soldiers, axe boys, staff boys, crossbowmen, big mace guys with holy shields, big club and hammer men, charging spikehead boys, archers, dogs. God, there's so many goddamn dogs. Big claymore knights, a fire and holy version, women who hate themselves, poison spearmen, and abyss sorcerers. Now you may be sitting here thinking, wow, that's a pretty decent list. Why are you complaining? Because they show up in every area. In most Souls games, you expect to find an area with enemies related to that area. Like, you know, in Blighttown, you find these pale monsters. In Raya Lucaria, you find sorcerers. In Rosa Isabel Street, you have flamethrower puppets. You get it. The enemies in the area should reflect the area that you're in. And to be fair, it's not like all areas in Lords of the Fallen don't have specific enemies. Like in the fire areas, you have flame sorceresses. In the tower, you have the poison spearmen. The Thief of the Chill Curse area, you have sorceresses that launch ice attacks and summon ice zombies. But one, each area has only one enemy introduced, and two, that's surrounded by the same grunt hammer bros and archers you've been seeing the entire game. Oh, you like that mini boss you start the game with? Oh, well, better get used to seeing him throughout the game. Like, I shouldn't be feeling like the Leprosarium and the Abbey have the exact same enemies for the most part. I should be getting hit with new enemies everywhere I look, not the same guys. Oh, and by the way, that's just the overworld. In the Umbral realm, you know what you have? Zombies, spirit shooters, little crawlers, moth flyers, reapers, and big face monsters that just spawn in randomly. What the hell? For the entire game. That's it. You mean to tell me that throughout the entire runtime, you don't add any level-specific enemies to the Umbral worlds? I fight the same guys from beginning to end? Did nobody at CI Games think that would get old after the 70,000th zombie? It sucks because new enemies present new challenges, and I barely felt like I was encountering any new challenges, which is the basis of all Souls games. Mini-bosses as enemies do not count. Unfortunately, this takes a lot away from the level design and makes Lords of the Fallen feel kinda samey, which sucks because everything else about the world feels incredible. But you know what else feels incredible? Well, the main reason why we came here. It's now time to bring up the boss, baby. Dude, I'm impressed. I genuinely didn't know how the bosses were going to turn out in Lords of the Fallen, given how much shit the main game got. And even though they made a ton of changes, there's really not a lot you could do if a boss's moveset is shit. It just stays shitty, minus some hitbox fixes or something like that. But it turns out, the bosses were great all along. In terms of the main bosses, because let's be honest, the mini bosses are kind of lame. There's 12 of them, but I only did 11 because apparently one of them is behind a very convoluted questline. But in my opinion, all but 2 are good. Say it with me. The Hollow Crow! But dude, starting with the appearance, UE5 is working overdrive on these guys. All of them look fantastic. I mean, look at the Congregator of Flesh. It's crazy. It's like a love letter to both the Rotten and the Curse-Rotted Greatwood. Why you'd want to write a love letter to both those guys, I have no idea. But if there's one thing these boys aren't lacking, it's badass designs. But these guys were also very fun to fight, and they all felt unique, which I was not expecting from a game this crapped on at launch. Let's highlight some, because I think these guys deserve their flowers. First up, we got the first main boss you fight, Pietà, aka that girl in Catholic school who took her studies way too seriously. The first phase may seem basic at first, with some wide swipes with her lightsaber and holy laser blast. Pretty cool to dodge, and it seems like a basic tutorial fight. And then she grows wings in phase 2.
Oh shit, not good.
Now we gotta worry about side dive bombs and swords flying down afterwards. Apparently Pietà's a f***ing sister of battle. This fight is really simple, but it's executed so well that just a few basic swipes feel way more intense than they should. Even more so after the fact that after you kill her, she reincarnates from the pool of blood you just turned her into. I legit got scared and thought that the tutorial fight was gonna have a phase 3. Like, damn, we want to throw this at the player this early? But she just flies back to Skyrest Bridge and becomes an ally and helps you level up your heals. Feels pretty satisfying making the first boss of the game your ally. Perfect way to open your game up. But then things get even more badass with what I think is probably my favorite boss in the game, Tank Chad, Master of Castigations. Absolute baller name. Best way I could describe Tancred is that he feels like a boss that would be in Dark Souls 1. Not too complicated of a moveset, but what he has can still mess you up pretty bad. He's basically the epitome of, if you know what you're doing, you're good. If you don't, you're in trouble. Maybe a little on the easy side, but still satisfying. And then, he and turns into that monster whose voice you heard in the cutscene. Say hello to Reinhold, Tancred's monster side. We go from badass imposing knight to a beast fight that looks like something straight out of a Junji Ito comic. I hope you like those guys pouncing on you, because with Reinhold, it just doesn't stop. I love this fight. It's so awesome. I got nothing else to say about it. That's my feeling. Next, we got the boss that you're going to see a lot of, whether you like it or not, the Lightreaper, the Margit, the pursuer of Lords of the Fallen, tasked to hunt all lamp bearers and prevent them from fulfilling your quest. Don't ask how I did when he first showed up. But then, towards the end of the game, he ambushes you one final time and you have no choice but to kill him. Which is where you realize, shit, I gotta take the Umbral Parasite out before fighting this, or else he's just gonna keep regenerating. Damn it! But once you get that shit out of the way, you fight him and his pet dragon. And, I don't know if you can play this at 60 FPS on console. All Lightreaper knows is combos. He can't stop, he won't stop, and you had better dodge right the entire time, or else your ass is toast. And that's before he adds fire to his weapons and his dragon starts thinking for himself. I think this might be the hardest fight in the game, and if you could beat this guy, you're pretty much set for the rest of Lords of the Fallen. But even though he might be the hardest fight in the game, and Tancred might be my favorite fight in the game, they're not the best fight in the game. That honor, hands down, goes to Judge Cleric, the leader of the Hallowed Sentinels, and big fan of Hilda from Soul Calibur. You've walked through the Empyrean, which has strong dark storms throughout, and then you drop down and suddenly wind up in a quiet field in a countryside, with the Judge in all her golden glory greeting you. Through holy sword swipes, holy laser blasts, holy arrow barrage, Batman, I don't think this woman believes in sex before marriage. F me in the ass because I love Jesus energy here. And then you cut her down, and the mirage is dispelled. You're back to the stormy backdrop of the Empyrean, and the Judge's true form shows itself. A dark husk, a witch-like presence, completely devoid of all holy aura that you saw in Phase 1. Yeah, if you weren't sure what you thought of you, the fight then becomes the first phase with Inferno Fire added, and additional attacks and her combo strings, and lunging stabs from across the arena apparently, and a collection of random Michael Bay explosions. I find it really cool that this is a boss that does the reverse prime boss thought. Normally when you have a husk of a boss's former self, you fight the husk first, wonder what they were like in their prime, and then down the line, if it's available, fight the prime version. But Judge Cleric is the opposite, where you fight the prime version first, and then the husk that she becomes, even though this time, the husk seems to be an upgrade. It is a fight that is glorious, sweaty, and oh so blasphemous. And the best part is, Pieta doesn't say a damn thing about it after you kill her. What a good girl. So these are the great bosses. These are what an incredible time in Lords of the Fallen looks like. But I have a rant I need to give. For as great as the boss lineup is, I said all except 2 were good. The problem is, one of those 2 happens to be the final boss.
That is one big pile of shit.
I mean this with every fiber of my being. Adir the Bereft Exile is the worst final boss fight in any Souls game I've ever played. Worse than Aldia, worse than the Chandra, worse than the Yamata no Orochi. That on its own is a major accomplishment. That boss title is a scam because you're not actually fighting Adir. You're fighting the zombie guys around him because his essence will go into a chosen zombie at any time and you have to kill it. It's Deep into the Deep, but the zombies this time will drop fire puddles around them so you can't get to them as a melee class without taking damage, and when you kill them, they explode, so you better hope you're nowhere near them when they die. So not only are you not fighting the actual final boss, but doing it is the most frustrating thing in the entire game so far. This is how you end this game? This piece of shit? Let this be a warning to you. Never even think about having a final boss like this again. May this thought never even cross your minds. And if somebody at CI Games were to even think for a second about the mere concept of a boss like this, may one of you cosplay as Tancred for a day and throw them in the Tower of Penance where they belong so they may be taught a lesson. Remember this for the rest of your lives. But other than that, you guys did great. I'm going to say it again. I am very much impressed with the boss lineup, and that's not even mentioning guys like the Hushed Saint, which is a tree-made headless horseman that can go underwater. That's a great concept. If this is what their bosses are now, I can't wait to see how you guys can potentially build off this. I will be right there day 1 to see how. After finally playing Lords of the Fallen 2.0, I can safely say that this has joined the ranks as one of the most high-profile redemption arcs in gaming history. From launching as a game full of problems to one of the most badass Souls-likes, there's nothing but praise you could sing for Hexworks and CI Games with how they handled post-launch support. Now the question becomes, can they get it right the first time, next time? Because they showed that they can learn from their mistakes and turn garbage into gold, but can they take those lessons and apply it to their next game? Because I'd be lying if I said it's not fair to be skeptical of their next game. But right now, we could sit easy, because Lords of the Fallen is indeed the redemption story that they always envisioned. It was well worth the wait, because I can say proudly that Lords of the Fallen 2.0 is a 9 out of 10.